Hello, I'm Dolores Greenwald. I'm the director of the Williamson County Public Library. And today we have for you a very special presentation by Chad Gray, who is Williamson County's election administrator. And with all of the discussion about absentee balloting with the pandemic and what have you, he has been gracious enough to come and present a program for us. So I'm going to hand it over to Chad and his video presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Chad Gray, the Administrator of Elections for Williamson County. I'm glad to see people are interested in what our office is doing these days. And being informed, I think, is extremely important. We faced a lot of challenges in regards to a lot of what we do with elections this year. And I think absentee voting is certainly one of those things that we're having to navigate through in a different sort of way. Historically, our voters in Tennessee, only 3% vote by mail. So that's going to be much different this time around, and we're trying to navigate this as well as we can. And platforms like this are certainly helpful to get correct information out there about absentee voting. So let me just kind of give you an overview as to how the absentee voting process works for those voters in Tennessee. In Tennessee, you have to submit a request for a by-mail ballot to our office, and that form can be found on our website at williamsonvotes.net. Now, one of the questions that has come up recently about absentee voting has to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are a couple of reasons on the form that deal with those issues. One has to do with underlying medical conditions, and the other has to do with being a caretaker of someone that is susceptible to COVID-19. Now, our office is not in a position to make a legal determination as to whether you are entitled to vote under those reasons. That's something that you'll have to take upon yourself if you're choosing to vote by mail. But by and large, most of our voters that have applied to vote by mail that are in those susceptible groups are already qualified to vote by mail. The most prominent reason for voting by mail is for voters that are over 60 years of age, and that's what a lot of our absentee voting requests have been so far, are voters that are over 60 years of age. So back in September, actually, let's go back further than that. August 5th was the first day that we could receive a request for a by-mail ballot for the November election. So we have been receiving requests since that time. Now, it was not until the second Thursday in September that the qualified candidates for president were approved for our state. And I believe that there are 9 candidates running in Tennessee for president. They're electors running for president. So at that time, we found out who actually was going to appear on our ballot. So right after that, we went through the proofing process for our absentee ballots, and we received those ballots late last Thursday. So we started mailing ballots out on Friday and over the weekend, and we've been doing that diligently ever since late last week. So some of you that have not received your ballot, if you submitted your request before last Friday, you should be receiving your ballot in the next couple of weeks. Now, I wanted to comment briefly on our relationship with the U.S. Postal Service. I would say that our office has probably the best relationship that I think we've ever had with the Postal Service. And they are making a diligent effort here locally to get ballots sent out to voters as we drop those off. So, but that is required in our state. You must, in order to cast a ballot, you must cast a ballot by mail. We do not have drop boxes. Those are not legal in Tennessee. So once we mail the ballot to you, you will be responsible for mailing it back. The post office said that if you don't put 2 stamps on it, they're going to mail it anyway. But I would put 2 stamps on an envelope for your ballot to be returned. And all of those ballots will need to be received by the close of the polls on election day. So I think that kind of gives everyone a little bit of an overview of the absentee process. Now, another form of early voting in our state is, or actually in-person early voting, and that will begin on October 14th and end on October 29th. So we'll have 8 sites. Those sites will be open basically till 6:30 p.m. daily. They all open at 9 except for our office on West Main. And anyone can vote early that's registered to vote. So October 14th through the 29th, daily hours till 6:30 p.m. And on Saturdays, there are 2 Saturdays from 8 to 3 p.m. So anyone is entitled to vote early that is registered to vote in our county. When you go into a early voting location this time, we'll be practicing social distancing. Our poll officials will be wearing masks. There will be lots of personal protective items there, hand sanitizer and that sort of thing. So we're making every effort we can to address those issues as we navigate through these times. Okay, so I guess we'll get into the questions that were submitted today. Some of these I think I've already addressed initially. We had a question about someone that has 2 residences, one in another part of the United States and one here in Tennessee. And that's can come up periodically, but voters have to choose what is their permanent residence. So where they would have their driver's license, for instance, is an indicator of a permanent residence. So a voter would be entitled to vote based on what they consider their permanent address. So that for that particular situation, those voters should be able to vote by mail through us, even if they actually own a home in another state. The next question is, what happens if we asked or request for a ballot but don't receive it? Can we vote in person? Well, you can vote in person, a provisional ballot. It is designed for the voter. If you choose to vote by mail, that's really kind of the path that you have chosen. But if for some reason you don't receive your ballot, for instance, if you're a college student, for example, and the college address, for whatever reason, you didn't get it, you can certainly appear during early voting or on election day and vote by provisional ballot. And that ballot should be counted because obviously you didn't get your other ballot. So that should be okay. But the problem that we face as election officials is that we cannot let you vote on the voting machine if you have a ballot still floating around out there somewhere. So that requires the provisional process. I've already addressed when the ballots would be mailed out. We started mailing those out over the weekend, and we're trying to get those out as soon as possible. Voters that requested their ballots before September 16th should receive those here by the around the 4th or 5th of October. When will the absentee ballots be counted? Well, in Tennessee, ballots that are absentees cannot be counted or tabulated until the opening of the polls on election day. So we have an absentee counting board that's bipartisan. We have Republican and Democratic appointees to the absentee counting board, and those individuals will convene at 7 a.m. on election day to begin the process of counting our absentee ballots. And no tabulation can occur until after the polls close, but there's a lot of preparatory work prior to tabulation of those ballots. We had a question about a daughter being away at college. Uh, Generally speaking, a voter who registers in person is entitled to vote by mail. There has been some recent litigation regarding voters who registered online or by mail the first time they vote does not have to be in person. So that is a recent court ruling. I don't want to comment too much about that because the Tennessee Attorney General is supposed to be issuing a memorandum to all 95 election commission offices in Tennessee regarding how that is to be handled. So we are still awaiting a word from the Tennessee Attorney General. But if you go on the our website, you can read the information about voting by mail if you're a student away at college and that sort of thing. The next question was, I think that has not already been covered. When we receive your application for a by mail ballot, we will send you a postcard to say it's been received, or if you send it by email, we'll send you an email confirmation. And that's something that we've sort of gotten in the habit of doing for all of our by mail voters this time. Let's see. The next question is.
Can I ask a quick question with that statement you just made? I personally went to your office down in Franklin and went into the office, and I filled out the form right there on the counter and handed it right back to them. I didn't have to go on a website or online, or, I chose to come down there, and they were very helpful. So that's also an alternative, yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Just so people know that you don't have to do it by mail, or you can go down to their office, walk in the door. It takes 2 minutes to fill out the form.
That is correct, and thank you for bringing that up. We do have a number.
We've also got those forms at the library as well, and that you can pick up and to fill out at home and drop off as well.
All right. Yes. So if you come to our building on 1320 West Main Street, you can certainly do that. It is a little difficult to try to navigate into our office these days because of the activity with other offices in the building. But if you go through the health screening and that sort of thing, you can certainly get to our office and drop those materials off in regards to absentee voting.
Chad, there's a few in the questions in the chat. Would you like me to read you some of those to answer?
Sure, if you
okay.
If you want to.
Yeah, so Natalie would like to know, can I bring my completed ballot to USPS for them to mail it?
Okay, let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think they're talking about the actual ballot and not the request form at that point.
Oh, okay. Yes. You can take an absentee ballot to any post office. And to be quite honest, I think that what will happen is that any ballots that are received really close to Election Day, the post office will probably hand deliver those to our office upon receipt, maybe at the end of the business day and that sort of thing. But yes, I think that answers your question. Did that answer everyone's question?
I think that answers that. There's another question here that asks, when should we be concerned if we do not receive our ballot? Will the website status check indicate when my ballot has been mailed? Will it also indicate that my ballot has been received and accepted? You mentioned a postcard, but I don't think that there's any type of way to check online whether it's been received or not, is there?
Okay. After we're in receipt of your request, we'll send a postcard or email. When the ballot's actually mailed, that will be reflected on the Tennessee Division of Elections voter lookup feature, which is linked in the on this graphic that we have up, this tnmap.tn.gov/voter lookup. You can track the status of your ballot at that location. So it will show when it was mailed and when it was received on that page.
I'm just pasting that into the chat so everyone can have that website there to look
Okay.
that up. Okay, and then let's see. And then someone asked for the website to request a ballot, and I put that in the chat as well. But that website that they are in paper form, the absentee ballot request forms. So I put where you would find one in the chat, but you would have to print that unless you're getting one from one of our offices that's already printed, like the library or the election office or wherever they have those. And then Mary Lou would like to know, when are absentee ballots tabulated?
Okay. Yeah, we begin the formal tabulation occurs after the polls close on election day, but there's a lot of preparatory work prior to that. Just to kind of enlighten you about how the absentee counting board works, they'll convene on election morning at about 6:45, and then they all are given the oath of office to serve, and then they begin the process of opening all of your absentee envelopes. And they first of all they count everything manually, and then they make sure the numbers match what the reports say. And then they will go through and detach the affidavit on the ballot for which you have signed. And those affidavits are put into an envelope and sealed. So at that point, that ballot is not connected to any voter any longer. And then they actually physically open the ballot envelopes and unfold the ballots and begin the process of getting those ready to be scanned for tabulation. So technically, nothing is tabulated until after the polls are closed on election day. So
what I'm gathering is if people are watching the news and looking at who's going to win on election night, they're not going to see the results of absentee ballots tabulated with those.
Well, it just depends. It depends on whether the absentee counting board is finished with their work. So the early voting results will be released pretty quickly on election night, because obviously those are ready to go. It doesn't take long for the voting machines to be closed out and prepared for absentee, or I'm sorry, for the election night reporting. But the absentee ballot totals, depending on whether the counting board is still working, those will be potentially delayed. It really just depends on how long it takes our absentee counting board. So that's going to be an issue, I'm afraid, this time around, which is not unreasonable, but we only have 12 hours to get the absentee or the absentee counting board has to complete its duties within about a 12-hour period. But if they don't get it completed within 12 hours, they've got to keep going for the duration of the rest of the day and could possibly be into the wee hours of the next morning. But we hope that's not the case. We've really made some measures to improve the efficiency of the counting board and make things a lot more streamlined as of the last election. So even if we have 10 or 14,000 ballots cast by mail, we think that those can be completed during the course of election day. We hope. So this is a little bit of a learning curve for all of us, because we've never had this sort of volume before. Historically, we had around 3,500 ballots cast in the 2016 presidential election. So right now, we're expected to probably triple that number for our county.
Can I ask a question? Will you have different shifts so people aren't getting tired and their eyes get tired? And because, they have to process this stuff, obviously, by hand.
Well, by law, once the counting board convenes, they're required to stay there. So,
I see. Okay.
Until everything's finished. So, yeah, it's going to be a long day for them, I'm afraid. But we'll try to I mean, we're obviously going to provide meals for them and everything else, but it's going to be, it's going to be a lot of work for them this time around.
There's another question from the chat. Marcia would like to know if there is a way to follow up to see if an absentee ballot request was received, if they haven't received their ballot yet.
Okay. Early on, we didn't have the postcards. The printer had to get those to us, and so some of the ones we received very, very early, the first week of August, that is, they may not have received a postcard. But if you want to call our office, we can ensure that we have a request on file for you for that purpose, and we'll be glad to send out confirmation as such.
You want me to put that phone number in the chat?
Sure, it's 615-790-5711, and we should be getting a large number of our absentees out that were received early over the next week to 10 days. So if you submitted one early, you should be getting it hopefully before the 5th of October at this point.
And Mary Lou would like to know if a ballot has been rejected, will there be an opportunity to fix the problem?
We've got several different items pertaining to this. It depends on the nature of the rejection. Now, one of the common problems we have with the absentee process is that sometimes voters do not follow instructions. So we've had voters that detach the affidavit from the ballot envelope, and in that case, if that's detached and not returned, we don't know exactly where that came from, if that makes any sense. Because unless you can identify the outside of the envelope that it was returned in, that can be a bit of a challenge. But if a voter submits a ballot and for some reason the signature does not match, we generally try to notify that voter that the signature is not the signature we have on file. But that doesn't happen very often, actually, because the signature process is handled on the front end of an absentee voting situation. So we really have more absentee ballot request issues with rejections. We have requests that are not completed entirely, or they're missing information. And that's where we have most of our deficiencies regarding the forms that have been filed with our office.
Okay. Did anybody else have questions at the moment? This video Zoom has a time limit, so the video is going to end in about 4 minutes. But if people have additional questions, I can restart this meeting at the end of that, and we can do more questions as well.
I just have a statement to make. I came in on I think it was 8th of August. I'm the one that came in actually into the office, filled out the form and handed it back to the lady. She looked at it, said, yep, good to go, and took it, and I walked out. But I will tell you, I asked her a question about provisionals. I said, what happens if I cannot get there? If something happens and I don't get the ballot, or I don't, whatever, just what we've been talking about. And I said, will I be able to come in the day of the election and vote? She said, oh, no. You have chosen to do an absentee ballot, so that's what you have to do. And I said, no, but listen to my question. What if I never receive the ballot? And from what you were talking about, provisional, and that's what I was waiting for her to say. And I said, what about provisional? She said, no, if you've chosen absentee ballot, you have to do absentee ballot. So I'm just giving you this information so that perhaps you can talk to your staff and make sure they understand that provisional ballot is available to people on the day of election if something goes, haywire with their ballot, and they have a legitimate reason why they never received their ballot. and we're not able to mail it in. So I'm just sharing that information with you. I have no
Absolutely.
idea what the lady's name was. I have no, it's just somebody that was at the counter there in that small little office with all those folks. Other than that, it was great. It was an easy process. That's why I suggested if you can do it, go into the office, fill out the form, takes 2 minutes, and hand it back to them, and then they've physically got it in their hands.
Yes, and thank you for that. This is something that we've all had to sort of get accustomed to because of the volume of absentee ballots and requests that we've received this year. And I think one of the things that I probably need to reiterate with my staff is that the provisional process is there for anyone that did not receive their ballot. Now, one of the perils of this situation is that a lot of our voters get into this mindset that when we send them an absentee ballot, they can come and vote early instead. And it's sort of a buffet style to them. Well, it's not really designed for that. If
Right.
you don't receive your ballot, that's kind of where the provisional process is supposed to take place. But we'll let you vote
Correct.
provisionally regardless. But we do have some people that want to they want to treat it as buffet style, and it's really not designed for that. It's you kind of need to choose which path you're gonna take. And I know that's a little difficult to know because there's all sorts of variables, but we'll certainly vote any voter provisionally if that comes up for any situation, regardless of if they just want to show up and vote provisionally and they just don't feel comfortable mailing their ballot back. We'll do that as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, it'd be a great idea if you reiterate that with your staff. That would be great.